up in a flip chart when the players come in. You know, they think, oh my God, they're really going at it here. But the reality is those words are really no good unless you can get the player to live them, until they actually connect and believe, but maybe not all of them, but a high percentage of them, which gets the drive in them, puts the fight into the dog, we'll say, that they're going to chase people down, you know, and they're going to do the things that others would say, well, I know I don't want to be near that. So how do we try to break down the mental roadblocks to any player's development and performance? And the key for me, and any time I played, and if you ask any player who played at their very best, you'll ask them, what were you thinking of? Well, do you know what? I wasn't really thinking of anything. And what were they doing? They were playing with complete freedom. And that's what you want. No blockages, nothing getting in the way. You're just living in the moment and you're attacking everything you see around you. And there's, say, you're playing with that freedom. So my plan this evening is over the next 45 minutes or so to really outline how I try to achieve this. I achieved it more often than not. I'm happy enough to say, looking back on the piece of my career. And when I didn't achieve it, I could pretty much work out why and have a go at fixing the mistakes that I made. So the key for all of us at elite sport level, or when you get, you just want to deliver when it counts. You want to be there. If it's a junior B game and you want to get out there, you want to play your very best. So if you think about moments in our lives when we have to deliver, you think of an examination. So you're sitting down, the white paper is turned up and you're looking down at it, and if you haven't prepared properly for that examination, you know yourselves, everyone, you're going, oh my God, this is going to be a disaster, this is a car crash, I really should have opened the book an awful lot more. And it takes an eternity before they say turn over the exam paper. But if you've learned it and you're happy, you're going, whistling in the door, you're going, I can't wait to show everybody what I've learned. And when I turn this exam paper, I'm going to do it. The other big crunch moment a lot of us come to in life, outside of sport, is an interview for a job. This is where it really squeeze comes on, because there could be big bucks involved. This is a big life-changing move. It could be like that young lady sitting outside there, absolutely petrified. Oh my God, I couldn't get a parking ticket. I couldn't get a parking space. I'm late. I had to tell him I was late. This looks really bad. And then the pressure starts to mount. So how do you react to that? And a few techniques as to how you calm yourself down. Because in reality, guys, for me, that moment was the national anthem. So when you're down in Croke Park, or you're in Turles or Páirc Uí Chaoimh, or wherever you happen to be of a Sunday at 3:30, when you have to deliver, when all your body of work comes on the line now, this is the moment when all the doubts can come into your head if you haven't it done. The national anthem, I know, is a couple of minutes long. It is like it's 2 hours long if you don't have the work done. The same way driving to the match for your club player feels like an eternity if they have doubts in their head. So there was 3 core values that I had to make sure that when I got to that national anthem, when it was time to deliver, that more often than not, I felt I was in a position to enjoy it. So discipline, dedication and determination for me is what it all boiled down to. And I suppose I'm just going to explain to each one, to bring some of them to life in simple enough terms as to what I would have done to try to achieve each one of these. So if you look at discipline, the most important part for me of any player is to set a clear goal. If you're going to go someplace, you have to put it into the sat-nav. It's just the way it is. So another way of comparing it is, we kind of drift through life. So if you imagine yourself driving down the road in the car, suddenly you could have missed 50 or 60 or a couple of 100 yards of road. Why? Because your subconscious mind was driving the car. It does it all the time. It keeps you away from danger, and you weren't actively involved in the process. The same way for a player. If a player doesn't set goals, they'll meander their way through their sporting career, and they won't really, it's their subconscious is driving them, so they're never really setting a target. Because remember, if you don't set goals for yourself, you're really going to end up living your life helping others achieve theirs. So if I'm not setting a clear goal for myself as to what I want to do in training, when I arrive onto Croke Park to play against the likes of Henry Shefflin, Eddie Brennan, Joe Canning, these players, they've set very clear goals. And they'd want to put the ball past me in order to achieve theirs. So if I'm not robust enough, I'm actually going to help them to achieve their goals. And that is not a place I really wanted to be as a player. So what does the ideal goal setting look like? Well, in simple enough terms, I suppose, it has to be specific. So I'll give an example in the next slide as to what I would have used as my goals over the years. So it has to be not, I want to win an All-Ireland, or I want to win a county championship. Look, everybody wants to do that at the start of the year. I nearly kill lads when I'm involved with teams when they say to me, oh, we're going to win All Ireland. Sure, yeah, but tell me about the steps you're going to do to actually get there. The day by day things you're going to do in your life to get to this point in time where you have an opportunity to win one. It has to be measurable. So if it's 30 catches a night, if it's the coach telling you how well you did, it has to be something that at the end of the week you can look back and say, yeah, I did that, or no, I didn't. And if it doesn't work, well, then you just move on and you try to achieve it the next week. The next is attainable. So again, a bit like saying I'm going to win in All Ireland, you have no massive control over that. So it's something that you should be able to do. And you can be a bit hard on yourself if you don't do it. Give yourself that kick in the backside and try to get it the next week. Again, they have to be realistic. And again, that is a real key part of setting the goals. And finally, they have to be timely. So for me, it was weekly. So of a Sunday night, I'd sit down and I'd write out my 3 goals. I'd only use 3. There's no point in doing 20, getting carried away. Just do 3 specific goals. So for Sunday night, what would those goals look like? Like, try to be on the pitch for one night, the very first onto the pitch for training. You're in trouble if someone else is that goal, but you have a couple of training sessions in a week to try to achieve it. Catch 20 balls in a row. Be more vocal. Don't stop before the line. That is a big one for me when I played. You guys stopping before the line. It's just taking shortcuts when it's only a mental thing to move your foot, an extra foot, to get it behind the cone and do things precisely. It just shows that your mind is in the game. So get the coach to say, well done, at least 3 times a week. God knows how many times I would have followed Cian O'Neill or Eamon O'Shea or Liam Sheedy around to make sure I ran the shuttle runs beside them to say, well done, Brent. You know, so I was close and they could see me. So you have to be a bit tactical sometimes with this. Seek feedback from the coaches. Some players are very quiet. And I think as a coach, we're probably duty bound to create an environment where a player can speak to you, where you can say to them, look, what are your goals for the week? You know, how you stayed after 30 minutes after training to practice a given skill. Can I help you with any skill? Can I stay behind and help you? You know, can you use your weak side a couple of times in a drill in the week? So we need to fire these kind of things because as coaches, I think the mental side of the game needs to be educated. I don't think certainly you can come in with a sports psychologist, which some clubs do, in one night. Now we're all going to talk about our feelings. Now that's done. Let's go back to the grindstone and go out and do 40 jab lifts. I think it's something as a coach we probably need to work with our players. I know certainly I was looking to get that as a player over my career. And in the coaches that I found where there was a two-way path of conversation to help me, I suppose, tease out, because no one's born with all the answers. In that case, I felt I performed an awful lot better as a player. Even at inter-county level, you'd say, you know, elite players, they should know it themselves, or the good player in the club, sure, he knows all that himself. The reality is they may not. And I suppose, again, to reiterate, our role as coaches is to try to educate our players. So the next thing is routine. It helps relax your body. And it's, for me, the routine is really comes into its own the week of a big game. So it's obviously sleep, all those are the things. The week of a big game, I would have went down to White's Hotel in Wexford, down to the cryo chamber. It's minus just over 100 degrees inside there. It's absolutely freezing. You're not only the underpants, a pair of gloves and a headband on you so the ears don't freeze off and your fingers don't fall off. And you win there 3 times. The first time is about 1.5 minutes, then it's 2 minutes, then 2.5 minutes. So that's what I did to try to steel myself for all the world. Then I train on the Thursday night. I would take the Friday, a half day on the Friday before the bigger games. And what I was doing on the Friday was I was going out to have a walk around at 3 o'clock or 3:30, whatever time the game was on. Because if you think about it, we train at 7 o'clock twice a week or 3 times a week. Most of our games are played at 3:30 of a Sunday. The daylight, the sun, it is all completely different. The impact on your senses is different. So I wanted to experience that. So I'd walk around at 3 or 3:30 on the Friday, maybe just for 20 minutes, walk outside, have a look up and see what the clouds and all look like, what the sun was like, what position you'd be in, and pretty much put myself in the moment of what it would be like on the Sunday. Now, I'm not saying I sat in the corner of the garden with the legs crossed like a Mandalotto ad, like the Buddha, trying to do all these things. It's just very gentle, relaxed, comfortable in your own skill kind of stuff. The next is your diet and rest. And a question I ask players an awful lot now is, what are you prepared to give up to claim the life you say you want? We always say we want something. I want to be better. Well, what are you prepared to sacrifice or give up to get the time to be better? So that might be rest. If you talk to any of the professional sports people, they say that the difference between when they're amateur, especially the rugby players that I talked to in their transition, the difference between being amateur and professional was they could go for a nap during the day, or they had more downtime, and that helped their body recover. Diet for me was, I'm an absolute disaster for chocolate. I just had to eat it all the time, no matter what our dietitian Aoife Ahern would say to me. I had to have it. So we came up with a solution. The solution was I'd leave a fruit bowl over the fridge. I couldn't very well ask my wife to not eat chocolate. The consequences could be a lot graver. So I said, look, I'll put the fruit bowl over the fridge. So every time I got the munchies, I went out to the fridge, and hey presto, the fruit bowl was over the fridge. It was easy, and I got the apple, the orange, or the grapes, or whatever the case may be, and that was a good decision that I'd made. The next thing then is the no negative thoughts. Like, we all kind of talk about this, and we say, be positive, and you'd nearly shout that at somebody, without really giving them the skill set or the tools to build up to a point where they can know that they're staggering a little bit in their head pre-match, that they're getting the wobblies a little bit. And so a few of the things I would have used to try to run the happy tape. So they're called triggers, and I'll touch on what other players and managers would have used to do this in a while. So at the time in 2007, I'd been dropped. I obviously had negative thoughts out the door. As you can imagine, this is a disaster. When I had time by myself, oh my God, it's all going down the tubes, but I need to be brave and strong. What am I going to do? So I asked for advice, and the advice I got was to start a diary. So every morning I went to work, I wrote a diary, ended up about 60 Word document pages long by the time the year was over. But I found it was very, very good to think in ink, to put it down. And I felt once I wrote it down, it had gone. So I think if you have a player experience a difficulty in the way they play, or a difficulty in life that's impacting their performance on a pitch, which is minor compared to what they'd have going on in their life, let's be honest about it. But sometimes the freedom players have is on the pitch, and when what they bring off the field comes onto the pitch, it kind of says, I've nowhere else to go to get this out of my head and play and express myself. So a diary can be a huge help to that. Ask them to jot down a few lines about how they feel in the day before they go to bed. Take it out of their head, or the following morning it's clear out of their head so they can have a clear run of the day. The other thing I used to do, which could be a little bit out there, but at the same time I've spoken to a number of players and they did it, is a video of myself. So in the early days I've had a camcorder, and when I would have played well, or more especially I suppose when I was fortunate enough to win the All-Stars. So after I won my second All-Star, it was in 2002, I decided this is what I was going to do. So before I went down to collect it, I sat above in the room, and I had the camcorder with me, and I just talked into it, and pretty much all I said was that you're about to go downstairs, you're about to collect an All-Star. Throughout the year, you have huge doubts. You worry an awful lot about the way you're playing and what you're doing, and that's kind of the way you operate. But don't worry, your process is really good. The way you go about it is right, and probably these negative thoughts are giving you the G up that you need. Close it down. Now, there's a nice few occasions actually when I'm going in on the team bus and I leave it on the phone. I'd upload it. In modern times I'd obviously have used the FaceTime on the phone and all that and record it that way. And I would actually, as we're going through the crowds, everyone else has the headphones on, they're listening to tunes, which I would do as well, and I found that was very helpful. But sometimes I needed that extra bit. And there's nothing better than when you look at yourself, telling yourself, look, you can do this thing. Have confidence, believe in yourself. And there's a way you carry yourself. I think communication, some of the gurus said it's about 85% body language, about 10% of tone, and then the rest of it is the actual words that you're using. So the way you even look on the screen portrays confidence, and you remember to yourself, I am that person. So let's go out there and do it. So let's look at other players and what they did. So the triggers is how you run that happy tape. So you're feeling crap the morning of the match, and you have to convince yourself that you are the best player that God ever put on the planet to allow you to go out and play the game. So the first player I picked is Declan Fanning. Owen Kelly there is on the right, showing his back teeth there after the All-Ireland final in 2010. The left is Declan Fanning, and I'll just draw your attention to his right hand, the left hand as we look on his wrist. So Declan would have had these triggers written on it. So NTL is one thing he would have put down on the wrist, which is nothing to lose. And the reason he'd have done that is, all of you, I suppose, at some stage in your lives have played in games, and you know how quickly the game goes by. It's bang, over, it's half time. you're in the dressing room, it feels like 10 seconds, bang, you're out there. And when it's over, then you look back and go, oh, there was a few things I wanted to do, and oh, I was stupid there. I got caught up in thoughts. I started thinking about other things I shouldn't have. So we need these triggers during the game. Some players use them an awful lot. Owen Kelly never really had that side of it on his game. He had other things that he would use, and his thought process was a little bit stronger, I suppose, than a lot of us that we deal with. So he was going through the checklist in his head as the game was going on when I discussed that with him. So this NTL, nothing to lose, Declan would have in his arm. Some people write down their partner's name, a loved one's name, a kid's name, all that kind of stuff. Even in that, if you look in the back of that jersey we have in 2014, there's a circle on it, and there's an F and an R on the back of it. And Tyrone had used it a number of years previously. I think they had a triangle. That F and an R was freedom and redemption. So when I walked around the parade that day in Croke Park, I was looking at the back of Owen Kelly's jersey, and everyone always said to me, you were very focused. I was looking at freedom and redemption. I was thinking about not me, I was thinking about the group, which was the circle. So bringing that on to the next level, you look at Derek McGrath. I took this from the All-Ireland semi-final when they played Kilkenny in the first year that they played Kilkenny in the semi-finals. So the R there in his hand is what he would have felt that Waterford had to be on that day. The square, and I'm really guessing and surmising on this, I haven't broached it with Derek, I would reckon the square is all about Croke Park. The circle, like that circle with the freedom and redemption that we had with Tip, is the group. It's the team, it's the collective. It's what's needed on this given day to get the county or club across the line. And the R then is what he felt is the key word he would have to be on the line to portray across to his team to beat Kilkenny. And the R for him was relentless. That's what he felt he'd have to be. So in the hysteria and mad emotion of a game, when you're running up and down the sideline as a manager, frantically trying to make changes, watch what's going on, the stats guys roaring at you, we lost the last 3 kickouts, what are you going to do about it? They're gone, but all you can do is try to focus on what you want to be and the image you want to portray, I suppose, to your players, and that was relentless. The one I would have used on the pitch was a blinking 3 times quickly. So if I'm inside, if I'm playing and training and I bring off a good save, I'd have blinked 3 times quickly. If it was something that made the hair stand in the back of my head, I blinked 3 times. So when I'm down on the pitch and the goalkeeping position is a lonely enough spot, you're there with your thoughts obviously for 70 minutes, you might only see the ball 4 or 5 times, and in 2 of those 4 or 5 times you could have cost your team the match. So it's a very much a lonely spot where you have to keep yourself pumped up all of the time. And that's why I suppose the mental part of the game is what's attracted me most, because I'm alone with my thoughts for so long in that particular role. So that triple blink would be the one that would say, right, let's go, 3 blinks. I'm in that moment in Dr. Morris Park when I brought off that great save, and now I have the happy tape running again. So then we move on to the second of my goals that I focus on, and that's dedication. So dedication really is like how many games are won and lost when nobody's looking. So like we all, as I say, want to do things. I mean, you're always trying to sacrifice things. You don't have to tell the group. Sometimes as a manager, I mean, with Liam Sheedy would have done this a number of times. He would have said in a group before the match, when we're in the team hotel, he'd go around to 3 players. He would have probably highlighted to us early in the week, I'm going to ask you the sacrifice you've made to get to this point in time. Pick one of the ones you've done that probably hurt you or sacrificed the most. I remember he came to me in 2010 before we played, or 2009, sorry, before we played the All-Ireland semi-final against Limerick. There was a U2 concert that I couldn't go to because we trained the same night. He changed it overnight. I thought it was going. I couldn't go. I gave up the tickets. I told the group, and he asked a couple more before the game, what did you sacrifice? So it gave a bit of a picture to the rest of the team, what people were bringing to the party on that day. The next thing is always test yourself before the world does. And there's a certain amount of, I say, discipline getting into this dedicated part of doing this particular line. For me, what this looked like was many of us arrive onto training and we don't feel great. I just want to get through this, is what you'll hear being said. Eamon O'Shea was exceptionally good at spotting this with us as a group with Tipperary. He would see us coming in, he'd watch us in the warm-up. He had a kind of a sixth sense, and then he'd take the session, and the tempo at the start of the session would be through the roof. They'd be hurling balls going every direction. The pace of the session would be a lot different. And looking back on it, I would have said to myself, well, look, he recognised it. So as a player, I'd have always said to myself, look, if I'm not feeling great going into training, if I'm not hydrated enough, if everything looks like it's gone pear-shaped, that is the time as a player you need to say to yourself, right, this is the best training session I'm going to ever have. And you attack it and you go for it. Because the day you arrive at the match, and like I said, you might have had a row with yourself, a row with the kids, a row with everyone, their mother at work during the week. Everything was a disaster. But the people outside looking in don't really care what kind of a week you have. They only care what you look like for that 70 minutes or an hour that you're going to perform for in front of them to try to win something. And the same way for your teammates. So you have to have a starting point as well as a player. A point in time where you say, right, this is it. For me, I think any player, their starting point should not be the 1st of January. For me, it always was the 1st of November. Like, what would that starting point look like? It was a mountain run I did. It's about 6 miles from home here to the higher point of the mountain and back down. It was done at about 8 o'clock. It was pitch dark. Put on the headphones, off you go, and up the mountain you go. And there's one particular slope on it. And I'm doing it since Nicky English got involved with us in 1999. So I was doing that mountain run until I retired in 2013. And that's really when I knew it was time to go. I found it hard to motivate myself to get training on that 1st of November in 2012. And that's when I really said to myself, this is my last cut of this thing now. And there's a particular point in the mountain where it's extremely, extremely steep and I have to keep jogging. I just have to. I know I do. I can't walk. It's a sign of weakness in my head if I walk. I won't be ready for what the year ahead is going to do for me if I walk. And the other then, and it's Jack Nicklaus would have said it, the more I practice, the luckier I get. So I want to draw a bit of attention to this, to muscle memory. And this is where as coaches on the pitch, repetitive, 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 attention to detail. So there's a lot of time when I would have trained at an intensity, especially I suppose when I'm tired. Because when I got nervous, I felt really tired. In the initial parts of my sporting career, I wore tracksuit bottoms. People thought I had wooden legs as a goal. They're all saying, why is he wearing the tracksuit bottoms? That's because I was freezing. I wore a United jersey. I wore loads of different things under my top. At the start, they were necessity because I was freezing. Even on the hottest day, I'd be perished because nerves did that to my body. But as time went on, then, you know, I didn't need them as much, and the United jersey, of course, kept, which relates back to the triggers. But when I trained at my hardest when I was tired because, as I said, it recreated that time in a match. So a lot of times when I would have dived and saved the ball or come out and caught the ball and cleared it, when I go back to the goals, I'd wonder kind of what happened there for all the world. So muscle memory kicked in. I just picked the right file out of my head and went out and I did it because repetition is the key. I see Owen Kelly, he'd stand over the ball out 40, 50 yards, and one ball after another, just zunk, 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 goes over the bar. Same routine, same practice over every ball, same attention to detail. And he used to have a great way of hitting the ball over the bar without looking at the goals. And I asked him one day when he was down practicing, I said, how are you doing that? He said, the goals don't move, bud. And I said, what do you mean? He said, the top goals and the bottom goals are in line with each other. So when I look at the top goals, I know where the bottom goals are, he said, and I hit the ball over my head and he had a picture of where the goals were. So that'll tell you the level of detail. But as coaches, I suppose, if you can bring something like that and work it on that half an hour after your players, then we're buying into improving our players and getting their development going. The next thing is, and there's a fair bit of dedication in this, and that's living in the now. It's a key part of playing well or training well or attacking life, is worrying about what's in front of you rather than, I suppose, than what's gone by. We all carry baggage around with us, and as players, God knows, the older we get, we carry more and more baggage. Something that happened during the week, the last game that went wrong, the last free you hit wide that you carry into the next game thinking, oh my God, today is going to be the same as the last one. So it's just a little story I got from the sports psychologist that I work with, and even today keep in touch with, Declan Kyle. So the story goes that there's a line of monks going back to the monastery, and they're in pairs going along, and they have to cross a river to get back there. And there's a girl sitting beside the river because the river's gotten too high, she can't get across. So she's hoping somebody will help her. So they all stream by going, no, can't look at her, can't go, let's go, let's go, can't talk to anyone, that order of monks. And next thing, one monk stops. He picks up the girl, his colleague is looking at him beside him going, what are you doing? He carries her across the river and he leaves her at the other side. And they all keep walking on. So about an hour later, the monk turns to his colleague and he says, why did you carry that girl across the river? And his reply was, I left that girl at the river. Why are you still carrying her? So when you think about it, we never leave stuff at the river. We carry it, we carry it, we carry it. The baggage goes on our back. It impedes performance. It impedes performance in our workplace. It impedes performance on our pitch when we only have 70 minutes to produce it. All that kind of stuff. So anytime I'd have spoken to Declan about the past, how not stuff that negativity I'd have about the past, I stop you there now, Brendan, he'd say to me, leave it at the river. And if you can get that story across to your players, and when a player comes to you and says, oh, this went wrong or that went wrong, look, leave it at the river. There's a new opportunity coming. Let's train for the new opportunity. Forget about it. Tomorrow's another day. All that kind of stuff. Because every day we start to play, it's obviously a blank canvas. We have another opportunity to express ourselves. So the final part of my presentation to cover off is this one is determination. And it's really, I suppose, trying to judge the size of the fight in the dog. How do you get that fight into people? And I want to start by showing a clip of a lady called Heather Dornan. Now, Heather was a 600-meter race runner. She ran for Minnesota, was the school she represented. And the video clip I have here is from 2008 running championships. Now, this lady, she was the bee's knees. She was supposed to be the one who was going to win all the points for them. She was going to go on to the Olympics. This was a stepping stone for her. And this is the way that this big 10 indoor track championship final went for her. So we'll just have a look at the race. There's 3 laps of the track. Let's just have a look at Heather's story.
In the 2 years. 3 laps in this event, 600 meters, 3 times around the 200-meter track here at the field house.
What a bold move by Fallon. She's looking very confident, and the Penn State runner is just running amazing today. She did win her heat in the 400, but ended up taking 4th overall.
That's Fondor moving into the lead, sophomore from Penn State. Dornan running 2nd.
Dornan last year scored 23 points for the Golden Gophers in their Big Ten championship. So they're really relying on getting a lot of points from her this weekend. And she's just coming by Fondor now in the home stretch, heading into the bell lap.
Down. Dornan falling down, gets up quickly, but that's going to cost her. Lucky she wasn't injured.
Her teammate just went to the front, though, so they may be able to recover from that. And Dornan is flying down the backstretch.
She is catching up.
She is going to catch Fondor, and she may catch the leader.
Wow.
Well, she's got one.
This is a gutsy effort by Dornan. Can she pull it off? She's moving to 3rd. Dornan coming down the stretch from the outside. Dornan coming out strong. Dornan all the way. Dornan. Wow, unbelievable.
That is amazing. To fall in a 600, I mean, this is basically a sprint. I mean, this is an extended 400, basically. To fall with 200 meters to go and get up and win, that is unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
That's one of the most exciting things I've seen.
So you can see from that, there's 2 things I wanted to, I suppose, bring to your attention from that video that strike me. Is that the first thing is that the commentator's language, if you listen to it, that's like the world's talk of the negativity. The first thing he said is that's going to cost her. When she looks like she was getting back into it, a gutsy effort. Lord, she tried, but she'd fail eventually. She's lucky she wasn't hurt. Her teammate will make up for her. But if you think of the athlete herself, Dornan, when she got up with her head up. She got up wondering, I'm going to catch the first girl. and then I'm going to catch the next one, and I'm going to catch the next one. And look, I'm not going to lose. I'm just going to run out of time, I suppose, was the attitude that she had. And when she crossed the finish line, the reaction is key as well for me. She was living in the now. She was very much in the present, because there was no grabbing the singlet she was wearing. There was no going to the crowd. There was no fists up in the air, fist pumping or anything like it. It actually took her the guts of 10 or 15 seconds after the race to smile, because she was so much in the moment. She had prepared so much for this moment that she was going to do everything she could to get across the line. And maybe the first reaction she had, like any of us who've won, I know the All-Irelands I won, was relief rather than elation that you had actually done it. So that's Heather's story on that. And I actually, that video was shown to me years ago, and ever since, I suppose, it's put the hair standing in the back of my neck. Moving on then to determination. This is very tricky, whether it's local papers or whether it's national media. Coming up to games, absolutely, for me, no media. I would have done press nights, and then I wouldn't read it. So I could have been splashed all over every newspaper that was all over the country the week of the match. They all going, what was he doing? I could have been just part of the media team that was sent out to do that particular week's game. It didn't really matter to me. I just don't look at it. I mean, Kyle would have always said to me, don't forget, Brendan, you write the headlines on Monday. You are the one writing those headlines on Monday. So you have control about what they say. So if your process is right, your preparation is right, your triggers are right, and all those are lined up, and all things being equal, based on the bit of ability you have, you'll play to your potential on any given day. And God knows, guys, like, there's some days we could tick all the boxes and it doesn't work. And that's fine. But that's where the process has to kick in. And that's where the no media has to kick in afterwards. You can't get drowned in by the negativity of people looking at you going, you didn't make it. You thought you would and you didn't. All that really, I suppose, has to be blocked out. The next thing is mistakes. Don't be afraid to make them. Any of the management that I've been under that have gotten success with us and gotten buy-in from the players, I have never really started a sentence with, oh, Jesus, lads, no, be careful out there now today, because, you know, that could be very costly if you let the ball through your hand. I mean, it's to empower players to go out and express themselves, for me, is the role of the manager. Your job during the week is to coach, it's to guide, it's to educate based on maybe some of the tools or something mad I might have said here. And after that, then, your job, I suppose, is to move the pieces around the chessboard to try to get the best out of them, whether it's you're using substitutions and all that. But you do have to trust the players. Now, I remember before we went out to play Kilkenny in 2010, the last words that I remember Liam Sheedy saying to us was, don't be afraid to make mistakes, go to the ball. And it was echoed in me afterwards in that it was the exact same thing, believe it or not, Nicky English would say to us. Go to the ball. Go to the ball. That was ringing in my head every night during the drills. Go to the ball, step into the ball, until I was sick of hearing it. It was embedded in my subconscious. So eventually I just put one foot in front of the other, announced to myself, because it's been drilled into me so much, and I went to the ball. Because, right, the only way you're going to win at it is to take chances. There's too many people on pitches that go hide. Why are they going to hide? If you ask them later, how come we didn't get out there and get stuck into it? More often than not, they'll probably say, well, I was afraid to be the one to mess it up, you know, and you have to let them express themselves. If they do mess it up and you're taken off, then we'll look at the video afterwards. We'll diagnose look back on what's after going on. We will help you improve, because unless you make a mistake, then you can't get any better. So the next thing is to remember who you represent. Now, sometimes too much emotion can obviously be toxic. We had a number of years back, we got to our first ever county final. It was a junior hurling, believe it or not, county final. We'd never won one in the club, and we did a load of stuff around the outside of it about who we're representing on the day, what we were doing. I even, believe it or not, crazy stuff now, went down to the local primary school the Thursday before the game to thank all the kids for the card that they wrote for us. Imagine, like, would I go down the Thursday for an All-Ireland final to a school? I would not. So signed the day of that county final, I was absolutely useless. I froze. I was afraid to make a mistake. I was everything on the last couple of slides that I said I shouldn't be. And even with those processes, it went pear-shaped. The following year, we got to the final. I played well. We won the match. Everything was hunky-dory, right? But you learn from the year before. But to remember who you represent, you're not on your own out in the pitch. You have your family who are supporting you. The parish are there. The team, even the people who have no major interest in what's going on, you think. They'll open the paper and they'll see that the team win. And they'll go, geez, we won the weekend. You know, they might know one end of a hurley or one end of a football pitch and the other, but we won the weekend. You know, and also from the team ethic, that when you go into the collective, it's the old thing, together everyone achieves more out of team. You give up, I suppose, a lot of what you want to do to help the team achieve. And if you can get that message across, and I'll talk about a couple of cases in the Cummins slides, how we try to do that with Tipperary. So that brings me to dealing with the knockers. And we'd have called them energy sappers and potholes. One of the techniques I suppose I would have used as a player is that when I'd meet somebody, and this was especially before we played Kilkenny in 2010, and the next couple of slides are predominantly around that experience of playing a team who had won the 4 in a row by beating us. They'd hammered us a couple of times along the way. So there was a bit of scar tissue, I suppose, within the group. But for me, I had decided that when I met one of these energy sappers or potholes, and you know how you fixed for the weekend with that kind of Heather Darnan look of, well, sure, look, you'll give it your best shot anyway, kind of look in their eyes. As a player, I'd say, look, sure, we're not going too bad. We'll see what happens, sure. And then you get the blast of, sure, look at that, they're very good. Like, all you can do is give it your best shot. All that stuff of the kind of loser talk starts to come out then, as far as I was concerned. So what did I do? In my head, I had the trigger. And my trigger was, I was side in the group with my arms around all my colleagues, looking every one of them in the eye. And all I kept thinking to myself was, you are going to get some rude awakening on Sunday when you see what we've prepared to do. And all the time, it filled me with confidence. The hairs would stand in the back of my neck, even nearly saying it now, I can feel them rising in my arms. And I got that determination. The fight started to come out in the dog, I suppose, as it were, inside of my head. And you be polite. You're always polite. You're representing the group. You never say to anybody, shut up, will you know what you're talking about. You take everything everybody says. Because at the end of the day, you might meet that person on Sunday and they go, jeez, I can't believe what you did the weekend. Oh, I'm still talking about it. All this kind of stuff, you know, is where you needed to go. But you need to have something in your head, a place to go, to allow your determination to fester for that little while you're getting over that moment. So then we'll bring it on to the G is more than about winning or losing matches. And everybody says it. You either win or you learn. Whatever kind of language you want to use around it in your dressing room, you're free to do it. But you do need to have a culture that it's okay to lose, but we'll learn from it. What are we getting from this loss? I remember when we were playing Kilkenny in 2009 in the league game, we came in at halftime, I think it was 4-12 to 5 points or something like that. It was something outrageous like that. I had been chipped by Martin Comerford in the last 2 minutes of before halftime, to the shout of Ole. I remember as it went over my head, there was Kilkenny supporters shouting, lock the doors, make them watch it, because Tip supporters were looking to leave. And I remember coming into that dressing room, and like what Liam Sheedy said that day to us was a real lesson for me. He came in and he said, right lads, sit down, and we all thought, oh my God, here we go. He said, right, whatever happens in the next 35 minutes, he said, we'll keep attacking the game. Right, we are getting hammered. There's nothing really I can say to you. I'll deal with this afterwards. I will take the rap for this. I will stay outside. I'll face the journalists and I'll talk to them about what's after happening here. That's not your concern. You just go out, you give it your best shot now in this second half. You keep attacking it. Keep making mistakes if that's what happens. You keep going. And we'll talk about it later in the week. We went out, and I think we won the second half only because it turned into a kind of an exhibition game, as you would expect. But when we got in Tuesday night into training, when the dust had settled, we saw a different Liam Sheedy. And we saw Liam Sheedy that, would you believe it, took out the jar of honey and he put it in the middle of the table, and we all thought, what in the name of God is going to happen here next now? All sitting around, turless, stony silence. And he said, every one of you, he said, know, he said, what that is, don't you? And we all kind of said, yeah. Well, he said, you can read the outside of it. You can read the ingredients. And then he put his hand into it. And he said, you're never really going to know what honey is until you actually put your hand into it, he said, and experience it. And then he referenced to all the buzzwords that were around the dressing room. And he referenced about dedication, determination, all the words were rolling out here, trust, friendship, family. We had all those pinned up. He said, all those are a waste of time unless you live them. And from now on, he said, we're going to live those values. And we did. And we learned the lesson from that defeat. So from a dressing room where we're getting bet by 20 points at half time, that could have been absolute chaos. By the end of that week, we were a more clearly focused, driven team who, yes, we still hadn't maybe gotten over the scars of it, but we felt we had a pathway out to success. And I think as management, that was a key learning for me. And Nicky would have been the same way. If we got clipped in matches, he would have come in. Yes, he would have given us a rollicking. Yes, if we weren't producing, yes, he would have went after us. But sometimes there are points in time where players are just slightly broken and your group has been broken, and that's fine. But then you need to learn from it. You need to get a system in place to rebuild them, get them strong, put a goal in place for yourself as to how long this you expect to take and what steps you're going to take to do it. So that brings me to the 2009 All-Ireland final. We came in to play Kilkenny. They were going for the 4 in a row. We played them in a league final. We run them really, really close in a very, very angry match where one of our goals was that everything that moved was going to be struck and we're not going to take a back foot. So we were well positioned playing Kilkenny going into them in 2009. So after 63 minutes in the 2009 All-Ireland final, Tipperary 21 points, Kilkenny 19. Benny Dunn had been sent off, but we had that hadn't really affected us, I would say. Things are going fairly all right for Tipperary. We're 7 minutes away at this stage from winning All-Ireland. Do you know what? We're not going so bad here. Things are chugging along exactly the way we would have planned. 64 minutes gone in the game. 2-19 to 21 points. Tipper losing. Disaster has struck. And the game was over in that 2-minute period, resulting in a very young Michael Fennelly, who come on as a sub that day, lifting the cup. Now, the only time I've watched that game, I suppose, in detail, the full game, outside of seeing clips of it to learn from it that Liam would have put up in 2010, was the other day when it was on TG Cahir. I couldn't hardly bear to watch it. But in 2 minutes, it was over. So what would happen next then for us as a group? What do we do the following year? 2010, 44 minutes in, 311 to 110, we're winning. This is a great position now, you know. And the next thing, what happened in the finish? We won 417 to 118. We pushed on in that game, and the difference was that poor old Mick Fennelly was down on the pitch, and Owen Kelly was doing that instead. So in the 12 months, what changed for us as a group? So the first thing that changed was we'd only one crisis meeting. The year before, we spoke about that game. We had a couple of meetings where it was nearly the blood in the walls. That Tuesday night after the Kilkenny game was one of them, and we had one more after that, where we weren't really self-regulating as a group. We weren't getting what Liam wanted us to do. And always in my experience, if you're calling players together for the third and fourth time to say, right lads, tonight's a clean slate, it's not really the greatest place to be in my experience. You'll probably end up doing it. You'll give it your best shot. If you win, it'll be a complete fluke in a lot of ways, in that the players haven't really bought into what they're trying to achieve as a group. So then our team discussions became a little bit more often after training. So it's only 10-15 minutes. Look over what happened in training, have a chat around the place. Was that good enough? Was it not? What to do well? What didn't we do well? And it wasn't always chaired by one person. People would chip in. It might be 5 minutes, it might be 10 minutes, but it never turned and descended into something of an air of negativity. And that was something I'm probably most proud of that we had created in our bubble, was that every time you walked into the dressing room, it was like walking into a new world. You had a bad day at work, you couldn't wait to get to training. Everyone said, how's it going? Geez, you're flying. Geez, you're fit looking. Whatever the case may be, someone always had something positive to say to you. And we really focused on that as a group, that we always lifted each other before we went out onto the pitch, and we focused heavily on that. And the final thing we realised through all of our meetings was that the scoreboard is only for the spectators. So when you think about it, if you're 6 or 7 points down in a match, if you're not prepared to throw in the towel, what are you going to do? You're going to try harder. You're going to push. You're going to chase down everything as best you can. Now, if you're 10 points up in a game, you take your foot off the gas as a player. You just do. It's just instinctive nearly, right? But when you think about it, you've trained for 6 months to get to a position where you're 70 minutes away from doing something really special. Or it could even be just the first round of championship or a league game. You've trained really hard. You've done determination, discipline, dedication. You've ticked all the boxes to get to this point in time. And then you don't put in a full 70-minute shift. You've decided that the guy putting the numbers on the board on the side of the pitch is going to determine how hard you play in that given game. So back to the 2009, we were 2 points down, or 2 points up. We had, 7-8 minutes left in the game. And when we discussed it as a group, we start to see the pattern that a lot of players subconsciously, and they would admit it because these are very frank conversations at the time, majority of the group would have said, I thought we had him. You'd hear that being said around it, I thought we were there. And then when we done the work with Caroline Curd at the time, it came to pass that we said, we are not going to look at the scoreboard. We are going to go at this thing hammer and tongs. So when you decide to do that as a group, you then need somebody to have a trigger, somebody in the moment of all that to decide, now is when we hit the turbo. This is where we've stumbled in the past. And that man on that given day was Owen Kelly. And I just want to show a clip now from when Noel McGrath scored whatever goal it was that day in Croke Park. So you can see from that Owen had his finger on his head. And if you looked around our pitch that day, a lot of the players would have put their finger up to their heads as well to say, we are all in this together. We all appreciate now is the moment. This is when we need to live in the now. We are not looking at the scoreboard. We don't care. We have a job to do. We're going to do it to the best of our ability. And when we can't wag anymore and when we can't move anymore, Liam will take us off, and that's fine. And if I'm not playing well, Liam will take me off, and that's fine. And another thing I'll just say, before that game, actually in 2010, and he's hurler of the year now, Seamus Callanan actually, that he won us that All-Ireland, I would say. Seamus had a great year in 2009. He was dropped for 2010 final. He'd lost a bit of form. And he spoke in the dressing room the week of that match. I think he was only 21 or 2 at the time. And he spoke about how he didn't care that he was playing or not. He was disappointed, but he wanted Tip to win. And he said, when I come on to this pitch on Sunday, by God, he said, I am going to change the tempo of this game. And like when I saw him coming on, the same as I saw Owen doing this, it gave me a huge lift. And the lesson we learned from 9 to 10 was to keep your head in the game. Do not think about what's going to happen 5 minutes later, what's going to happen 5 minutes gone or 5 seconds gone. Just think about what you need to do next. And sometimes a player will need to do this or have some kind of a signal in the moment that helps the players around them to understand that this is now the time we need to push on. Finally, I want to share with you what I would have laminated in my gear bag since I got it off Nicky English in 1999. It's a speech that Roosevelt gave called The Man in the Arena. It was delivered in 1910 there, but the speech goes, and it really struck a chord with me, because all of my time I'm always complaining about the critic. Don't be giving out to me, just give it a go yourself, and look, be prepared to fail. Appreciate sports people for what they are. They put themselves out there with the chance that they could fail in front of everybody, but they'd still go and do it again. So it goes like, it's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who knew neither victory nor defeat. And I just bring your attention to the last 2 lines, and that's what I really hung, I suppose, all I tried to achieve in my hurling career. And when I look across players who achieved, and we'd see them going, oh my God, they're bulletproof, they always lived their lives so that their place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who knew neither victory nor defeat. So the message, I suppose, from this is to get your players to go to the ball. Go to the ball with freedom. Build a structure around them. Talk to them individually. see what makes them tick, find what their problems are, help them find solutions, and then when you get them on the pitch, they'll then play with that freedom that I was talking about. So we're just at about 50 minutes or so there now. So I don't know, has anyone got any questions there? I'm open enough to taking them now. Whether I'll have the answer might be another day's work, but anyway.
Brendan, how's it going, Giles here? Thanks a million for that, boy. That was brilliant. Geez, I don't know. I think I could do with putting the fruit bowl over the fridge myself at the moment. So no, listen, honestly, that was brilliant. Geez, there's so much involved really in striking for perfection as a player, but the role of us as coaches is massive. You know, so fair play. That was brilliant. At the moment, Brendan, there isn't any questions in the chat, but that video of Heather Dornan was my first time seeing it there. It's powerful. It really is. I suppose, Brendan, just as a coach, how would you approach a player who has huge ability, but the application is shocking? You know, maybe the social scene is affecting them a little bit. Like, how would you approach that as a coach?
Well, I suppose I'd probably sit down with the player in a less formal setting. I might organise to meet him at lunch or have a bit of a catch up, and I'd probably ask him, like, in a lot of ways, look, you've amazing talent. I want to help you to fulfil your potential. How are things going? Like, and I'd actually, I'm not going too much into trying to be a father figure or prying too much. It can be a little bit more difficult if you're dealing with somebody within your parish. But on that one-to-one, you'd look at saying, how are things at work? How are things at home? Is everything all right? Is everything going okay? Is there anything I can help you with? And all that kind of stuff, you know. And at training the next night, you know what we'll do is, you'll help them to set the goals. Will you be a little bit more vocal? Will you, like, you're a leader on the team here, whether you like it or not, players look up to you. That's not to put pressure on them, but it's more to show them their value and where they sit in the reckoning order of it. If they're a player that's thinking they can't make it, or that they're not getting to the pitch of it, or that the group is passing them by, well, then certainly you do have to call them out in drills to say how good they're going. You're flying. You might start off this drill for us. Do you know what I mean? And then you might give them a couple of wall ball drills to do. It's very easy in the modern world of WhatsApps now to feed players maybe a couple of wall ball drills. Here, look, I think if you Google wall ball drill, it'll come up. It's not something you have to do yourself. You know, so you have to try to have the patience. And this isn't going to be this eureka moment where after 5 minutes of sitting down with a player that they go, oh my God, thanks for that. Now I'm going to be brilliant from now on. This is a slow process, you know, and there's an awful lot of emotional intelligence, I suppose, involved with it. But if you give the time with a player, you will get that back in absolute spades once they turn the corner. Because nobody turns up, I think, at a J pitch to play bad or to do bad with their colleagues. Everybody as human beings has a team spirit. They want to be part of the team. But to try to educate them as to where they fit and show them the value they have within the group, I think, will encourage them to train more, to maybe do a few more things off the pitch, maybe set a few small goals and help them monitor them every so often with their agreement and all that kind of stuff. So nudge it. And some players then, they might need a, come on, will you, for God's sake, and you'll know that they need to be shook. And as a manager, you know your player, and then you can light them up that way. So you need to see which approach needs to suit your player best.
I suppose it'd be a similar approach, Brendan, then as well for dual players. Say, like, if you had a player who was, you know, who would constantly missing Sundays, maybe playing soccer or things like that, you'd probably use the same approach for that, would you?
I would, to a certain extent, but I think in some of those cases, the group needs to self-regulate. And in that case, if you're a manager going to a player saying, hey now, you can't play that soccer match Sunday or I'll drop you. Like, you could be the best player you have, so you have to kind of skirt around it a bit, you know. So you might set up a bit of a management group. You might get a couple of players during the week to ring that player and say, look, we've something special going on here. Everyone's busting their backside. Will you leave that game or whatever? Or you might try to work with the player. But only really, I suppose, you'll know the temperature of your group. If you come into the dressing room at the start of the year and you start drawing red lines all over the place, right, and you start saying, if you do this, you're gone. The very first time a player goes playing soccer, if he's the best player you have, you're in some awkward situation then. So I think you need to set out the goals for the group at the start. What is tolerable? What isn't? What's a complete no-no? What is their levels of flexibility around? You know, and you'll know from your group and your leadership structure within it. If you can rule with an iron fist within the group, well then that's fine. I mean, we talk about Brian Cody. Oh, you wouldn't get away with not training with Brian Cody. Mick Fennelly did very little training by his own admission the week of matches. He did his own work he had to do. Why? Because Brian Cody knew that Mick Fennelly would be right the day of the match. And the rest of the group understood clearly that Mick is running up down the sideline while we're getting flogged to death inside here in training matches. But that's just the way it has to be. So I think if the group understands this, you're certainly in a lot better position. So I think an open conversation with the group at the start, take the temperature really of what they're happy with or not happy with, and then go individually to the player or getting colleagues to go to that player to try to get them slowly but surely in line to what the group, I suppose, philosophy is, or what the group branding is, or that kind of thing. Not easy.
Perfect. No, we're a question from Aidan in the group chat. He said, great presentation. He said, you spoke about confidence earlier. Some players are big time confidence kind of players more so than others. How would you best approach those players from an underage setup and a senior setup?
Well, the underage setup, you see, is a bit of a tricky one, because how many very good players have we seen at 12 and 14? They've turned nearly into the show pony in the club by 16. They've hang around with all the young ones, and the drink starts by 18 because they're the god in the club, and they don't play by the time they're 20. So, I mean, this one has to be managed really, really carefully. I think if you have that real confidence player, you obviously tell them they're going really well and fill them up before games and all that kind of stuff without putting too much of the weight of the world on them as a young player. Certainly, you can build their confidence as well in training, I would suggest, by getting them to pass it to other players. So before training, we have a couple of good under-12s. I'm involved in the under-12 team. So before training, I say to a few of the lads, look, will you pass the ball around the place here? Or I change it to putting a bib on the players who are not getting as many touches, and they're the only ones that can score in the game. So you're selling to the confident player, or the very strong player, that we're going to practice your passing tonight. And you pass the ball inside to Jimmy or Anne or Mary or whatever the case may be, and give them a good pass. Show us your range of skills for passing, because it's a team game and you can educate them then that way. For the players further up along the line, the real confidence players, I'd suggest to them is that if they have a really good game, I'd nearly ring them the following day and say, right, tell me a little bit about your days leading up to that game, you know, and build them a little bit of a routine. You know, and try to help them, educate them that way. So maybe if you do putting the left sock on or whatever that kind of mad stuff is, the Man United jersey for me, and try to get to the core of how they played well, and then you're getting to the core of how they tick, and then you can help influence them during the week. Jesse said he liked the fact that I told him he was going well in training, and then you tell him a couple of nights ago, geez, you're flying tonight, and you really build them up. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what you do for me with the confidence players, is to keep them topped up. If they go over the edge, then obviously you have to be stronger and firm with them and bring them back, because confidence can turn into cockiness very quickly, and cockiness is not a team player. It shoots all over the place. So I like confident players who are assertive on the pitch. The cocky ones can be a bit hit and miss, as we all know. So to rein them back as well can be a skill in itself. But I think once we create that as a management, and you're pinging these in your head when you're approaching a player, it'll help you have more positive conversations, as far as I'd be concerned, with that player.
Yeah. We've another question in from Francis. What was your three most important? What is your three most important areas you would work on as a goalie, Brendan?
First of all, my footwork. That's always key, because all the saves you see make involve a knee bend and a push to save the ball. So your footwork. So I'd be doing a lot of ladder drills. If you don't have ladders, you lie down to 3 or 4 hurleys on the ground and you use them as ladders. A lot of hurdles. Again, you could put 2 stones down and go over and back to hurdles. All that kind of stuff. So your footwork is key. Set out 4 cones, go red, yellow, blue, green in your head, and tip each cone and return to the middle each time. So that kind of stuff to speed up your footwork. But I wouldn't be doing it for an hour. I'd probably do a footwork session for maybe 10 minutes, not to overly fatigue. You want to stay sharp. The next thing I would touch on is your reactions. In that case, you'd have your back turned, someone hits the ball, they shout go, and you turn and you catch the ball. Now, it's really important, if you're coaching your goalie, that you don't have this cocky hero in the club drilling balls at him who's going down of an evening and wants to score 100 goals. For me, all the shots at a goalie in training, especially in the controlled environment of a drill session, have to be ones he's capable of saving. That's really, really important. Now, if you do want to drill balls at him and practice 1v1s, I'd use tennis balls, and that way the goalie can come out with confidence that if it hits off him, it's not going to hurt him. So if you want to do the 1v1 training like that for your forwards, give him the tennis balls, tell the goalie come out to meet him. I wouldn't be using live ammo that much because God knows the goalie. I know what it's like to get a big black bruise in your leg at training. It's a disaster. So, and the final thing, I suppose that I do is repetition of simple skills. So I could give 20 minutes of a night in training just catching the ball. Just someone out 20 yards hitting the ball in, catching. They can change the angle of the strike, they can change the distance of the strike, they can do all that, but muscle memory is absolutely key as far as I was concerned. Repetition, so that when the high ball comes in, you just catch the ball and you clear it as a matter of course. You obviously build in defenders, attackers into that drill over time to build confidence, to get game scenarios going on. But all the time, the odds are stacked in the goalie's favour and the forwards are told to be passive unless you tell them it's live and they can block down the goalie, which helps them go out to the side and all that. And the same way with balls coming in, I might have one ball coming at me, another is a drill where you have two goalies facing each other and they hit the ball at the same time and you get into a rhythm. So you're always worried about the next ball coming, not the ball that's going away from you, because the last thing you want as a goalkeeper is not living in the present. Like I said, you don't want him thinking about where am I going to hit it before he has it in his hand, because that's a real uh-oh moment, as we all know, and it ends up in the net. So they're the three that I touch on.
Good man. We'll just finish with one more. You said there you were over the under-12s, Brendan. Do you think that goalkeeping is a position that coaches need to be upskilled more on? And do you find it difficult to say just say if you had a group who nobody wants to go in goals or anything like that, like how do you pick your goalie, especially for young age groups? If you're involved with the under-12s.
Yeah, look, I can sympathise with that. I've had the tears with guys and said, "Will you play in the goals?" No, geez, no way. But what I started to do was to find a guy who has got a bit of a knack in the goals, I call it. Like when I started training, I'd set up mini goals up along the pitch and have 2v2s at the start of training to see who can score the most goals or who can save the most shots, and give them points for goals and points for saving. And then we rotate them around. And then you start to spot the guy who's knacky at stopping the ball. And has a bit of a love for it, and gets a bit of a buzz out of saving the ball, and tell him, geez, you're like De Gea inside in the goals, or you're like whatever goalie you want to pick, and then you start to build their confidence, And then in training, I'd rotate the goalies as well, so everybody in training over any given night will get a run in the goal, so everybody feels that it's not a stigma attached, going in the goals there because you're useless out the field. It's just something that happens. And it rolls around. And then the odd night you'd see a young fella, and we have a good goalie here, Danny. Started off, he had an appetite to play in the goals, didn't really know where he fit out the field. And I won't say a one-to-one, it's a bit extreme now, the 12-year-olds all think I'm mad. But I said to Danny, and I spoke with his dad, I said, look, this fella is quite good in the goals. Will we try him? And then suddenly I played him a little bit more inside in the goals, built him up, hit a few balls at him before training when the other lads were doing their pairs, did a small bit of work with him, not now outrageous, that like ladders and stuff like that, just little things on how to catch the ball, where to position your hand, little stuff like that. And he'd play out the field as well, so I didn't just corral him into the goals. So now I have a goalie, Danny, and he'll be the goalie for the under-12s this year, and maybe for the under-13, under-14 team maybe next year. We're in that, we haven't split the grades here in Tip. And if Danny on any given day wants to play out the field, I'll ask one of the other boys, look, Danny doesn't fancy it today. It might be a championship match. I play him in a I play him in a challenge game out the field, and just to give him a run around to see what that's like. And it's like that, we just ease them into it and go that way. But definitely, there's a lot of videos on coaching. I've done a few of them, they're on YouTube. There's a few other goalies have done it around the place. So there's plenty of material there. Just have a look and give 15 minutes with your goalie, get someone else to do, whatever the case may be. And show them, I suppose, that they're a very much part of your thoughts and the way you want to upskill them. And especially around the puck outs and things like that, because we all shout, oh, James, where are you hitting it? there's two-way show on a puck out. There's a guy hitting it, but there's also a guy receiving it. And if you can get that relationship better, the puck outs go better as well at a higher grade. So that's what I do to get the goalies at underage and at adult grade. Develop that little bit further, slowly but surely. Rome wasn't built in a day, guys. I think we all appreciate that.
Good man, brilliant. Listen, look, because I can appreciate now we're probably going over the time. We'll probably leave it at that. I just want to say huge thanks, Brendan. No, that was absolutely brilliant. I especially loved your analogy of potholes, the name potholes for begrudgers. That was very funny. So listen, thanks a million for giving up your time. Really enjoyed it. And we obviously have this recorded, so Colin will send the presentation out to everybody that's registered first. And obviously, thanks for everybody for logging in. And once again, thanks to you.
Good night, everyone. Stay safe and hope to be back for the charter football. We know it. Good night, everyone. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye bye.